Welcome to A is for Accessibility, a series presented by Open Access Technologies that explores best practices and trends in IT accessibility for people with disabilities. I'm Portland Helmick, your host, and today I'm talking to John Rochford, head of Index, a program at UMass Medical School that focuses on developing web technology for people with disabilities. John is also on the faculty of UMass Medical School, assists the World Wide Web Consortium in writing accessibility guidelines, and speaks internationally for the US State Department about artificial intelligence empowerment and fairness for people with disabilities. Thanks so much for being here, John.
My pleasure. I'm honored and humbled to be part of this series.
So obviously, you know a tremendous amount about IT accessibility for people with disabilities because of your work, but you also know a tremendous amount about it because of your own personal history. And I think I want to start there with your story. You, even though looking at you, we wouldn't know that you have a disability, you do. Can you talk about your disability and how you got motivated to become involved in IT accessibility?
Sure. Well, many disabilities are hidden, especially neurological ones, cognitive ones. For me, I had a head injury at age 16, and I lost my sight, and I lost my ability to walk. And I was in rehab for a long time. And I loved reading before I lost my sight. And I wanted to read. I was a voracious reader, and I was despairing because I couldn't read it, because I couldn't see, and there was no technology that I could find. And so after I got out of rehab, I went to my local library in Worcester, Massachusetts, and it had a Kurzweil reading machine, and I was able to put my books on top of it, and it was using optical character recognition, an earlier version of that, to read out loud in a voice the pages of the books. And it was a miracle for me. And I want to do that for everybody. I want to help them read.
Wonderful. And just to clarify, when you say that you lost your sight, did you lose it completely, or do you have any sight whatsoever?
Oh, yeah. So I did lose it completely, but I regained it fairly quickly. I started seeing light, then color, and my status now is I'm legally blind. What the definition is that whatever typical sighted people can see at 200 feet, I have to get within 20 feet to see. So essentially my vision is 10 times worse than typical vision, 20/20 vision.
And the cap that you wear it because of your visual disability, at least because of the lighting. Is that right?
Yeah. So I'm heavily dependent upon light to see, but perhaps the irony of it is that it also hurts my eyes. And so if I don't wear a cap, what happens is I start squinting and my eyes start tearing, and they hurt.
So, I think it's so hard, John, for so many of us who do not have visual disabilities or other sensory disabilities or cognitive disabilities to understand what it's like for people with those kinds of disabilities to try to use technology and be challenged by it. Can you give some concrete examples of some of the challenges that people with disabilities face when they're trying to use technology?
Sure. Well, a sad fact is that over 98% of websites in the world are unusable by the blind. And that's because they are not designed to work with the assistive technology tools that the blind use, such as screen readers. A screen reader is a program that reads aloud in a voice the text on a web page. And if that website is not designed to conform to accessibility standards from the World Wide Web Consortium, then that is not going to work for the screen reader user. And for me, I do use a screen reader, but I also primarily use magnification. And the vast majority, I would say that something like maybe fewer than 10% of the blind are totally blind. Most of us have vision. And for me, I can use magnification. And when I visit a web page, if it's not designed to conform to accessibility standards, what happens is when I go to magnify that page, other elements of the page, say advertisements or images, are superimposed on top of the text that I'm trying to read, and I cannot read it.
Yeah, that must be so incredibly frustrating.
It's for people who are totally blind, most do not even use the web.
Right. Yeah. So completely inaccessible.
Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit more specifically? I said you're the head of Index. Can you talk more specifically about what Index does in developing web technology for people with disabilities?
Well, the very first thing I always talk about, and I'm very proud of, are the people who work at Index. We are from like so many countries. We are people with disabilities. We are people of all races. We are overrepresented with female women in IT. We are people with, who are older. We have it all. We're so diverse. And what a smart, hardworking, passionate group of people I have. And if it wasn't for them, I wouldn't be successful at all. So I just want to say that first. So what we do is the way the public knows us, at least in Massachusetts, is we are the information and referral service for people with disabilities. So you come to our website, which is totally accessible, totally usable if you're blind or whatever kind of disability you have. And you can find doctors and dentists and programs and services and financial help, all kinds of things. And but the vast majority of the work we do is developing online learning and web applications that are all usable by people with disabilities, no matter what disability you have. And we specialize, especially with my work, in helping people with cognitive disabilities, not just people with physical disabilities.
And you're doing something with COVID-19, is that correct? Yeah. For people with cognitive disabilities?
Yes, that's right. So this is about my work in cognitive accessibility. For the World Wide Web Consortium, I'm on the Cognitive Accessibility Task Force, and we focus on creating guidelines to help people with cognitive disabilities use the web. And my own research and development is in artificial intelligence powered simplification of web text. So the simpler we can make web text, the better people can understand it. And my focus is people with cognitive disabilities, specifically people with intellectual disabilities and autism. And it also helps people with low literacy, non-native language speakers, seniors, the deaf, et cetera. And with the COVID-19 project, what we are doing is we are gathering the COVID-19 information published by every country's government. And we are recruiting people in each of those countries to simplify the sentences of the information on those websites. And we are creating a data set of sentences. So you have one of the sentences from the website, and then you have a sentence that has been simplified by somebody in that country. And as we create millions of these sentence pairs, we are training our AI, our machine learning model, with those sentence pairs. So we're saying, you machine learning model, you AI, you go look at this data set and you figure out how to simplify web text, essentially.
Can you give an example of what you mean by simplifying web text?
So social distancing, what does that mean concretely? stay 6 feet away from each other. Quarantine, stay at home.
Interesting, really interesting. So it feels like we're starting to talk about the future of IT accessibility, and I want to move in that direction. But before we move all the way into the future, I just want to take a look back a little bit over the last 10 years. Can you talk a little bit, John, about some of the most notable advances in IT accessibility for the disabled over the last decade?
Oh, sure. So there are, for example, free tools that can be used to test a web page or a website for accessibility. The unfortunate thing, though, is that these tools catch only about 20, at most 30% of accessibility errors and problems. And it really takes testing with people with disabilities to make sure your website is usable by them.
Totally makes sense. So when you project, John, into the future, into IT accessibility for the disabled, what are some of the most prominent advancements? You were talking, and I assume one of them maybe is simplifying web text. What are some of the other advancements that we're going to be seeing?
Well, my area is artificial intelligence, and I think that the marriage of accessibility and AI is the future, a future. One of the ways that I think about that happening is in personalization, where an AI, maybe companion, is with you when you're visiting websites and learns what you like to do and learns where your problems are, and then helps you, offers you tools, for example. I see that as a grand future. And I also see AI working in the way that I'm trying to make it work, which is to help people to understand content and to make use of it. So that's one way.
I know that another advancement in IT accessibility has to do with eye tracking. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Sure. About 2 years ago, Alienware started building into its laptops eye tracking cameras. And with the advent and the speed of technology development, we know that those those eye tracking cameras are going to move from laptops to mobile devices. And when they do, that is going to be an explosion of new capability for the worldwide. And there are all kinds of reasons why that I think that is going to happen. And a great one, I think, is that advertisers are going to they're going to love this, because they're going to be able to see what people are paying attention to. Are they even looking at the ads? And what about the ads are they looking at? Not only is it going to be helpful from a commercial perspective, but it's also going to be helpful from an assistive technology perspective.
So if I'm someone with an intellectual disability and I am looking at a mobile device and it's tracking my eyes and it can see that I am struggling with a word or a sentence, are you saying that in the future that artificial intelligence is going to be able to simplify that text for me in real time?
Yes. So say your artificial or AI companion, that's what I'm thinking about. It'll simplify the text. It will simplify the text to your literacy level. Maybe it'll give you a definition of the word you're looking at. Maybe it'll give you a picture of that city or that whatever it is that word you're looking at. Maybe it will superimpose symbols on the tops of the words to help you understand them. Maybe it will read out loud the text to help you understand it. There are all kinds of ways that the text can be augmented or changed to help people understand it. In the cognitive spectrum, so what I mean by that is, on the very low end of it, you have people with intellectual disabilities, and then you have people with other disabilities, like learning disabilities, like dyslexia, dyscalculia. You have people who everybody as we age, every single one of us is acquiring disabilities as we age. So our hearing is going, our vision is going, and also our cognitive function, our executive functioning starts to deteriorate, our memories, our ability to process information. And so the spectrum of cognitive is wide. And if we, as we are, can show that, or can help people on the lowest end of the spectrum to understand text, that means that everybody else in the world is going to benefit from this technology.
That's amazing. And I think that's one of the powerful things about IT accessibility for people with disabilities. It seems like it is intended originally to help someone with a visual disability or a hearing disability or a cognitive disability. But in the end, it benefits all of us.
Yeah, I have a couple of examples of that. So one is that you go to a bar or you're at an airport and you're looking at a TV screen and there's a newscast about some event and you can't hear because it's so noisy in your environment. But what you can see on the screen is the closed captioning. And so all these places turn on closed captioning so that everybody can absorb that information. And I think that people don't know, for example, that came out of the disability community as captioning. And another is essentially text to speech and speech to text. So all of the technology, like you say, okay, Google, or hey, Siri, and you talk to your assistant, that came out of the disability world.
I just want to say that I've only been working on this series a little while. And when I first started working on it, I thought, wow, this is such a niche topic, IT accessibility for people with disabilities. Like it seems so narrow, but the more I work on the project, the more I work on the series, I recognize that this is kind of pertinent to all of us. And I'm wondering and I know that you believe that actually all of us, and you've sort of alluded to that already today, all of us have disabilities. We don't necessarily think that we do, but we all do. And that's why this is important for everybody. And as we close the interview, I wonder if you could just elaborate on that a little bit more.
Yeah, well, I used a couple of examples earlier. Another one is it's a cognitive load issue. So for instance, maybe you're driving and you're trying to find directions to the restaurant you're going to, and there's a lot of traffic and there's a lot of noise, and the kids in your car are fighting, and there's a lot of sensory overload that's happening, and you are trying to focus on getting to your destination. That kind of cognitive load is experienced by everybody, but it also is experienced by people with cognitive disabilities all the time. And anything that we can do to help with the cognitive load problem for people with cognitive disabilities, therefore, is going to help everybody, because everybody experiences that. And the more that we can do to, for example, create simple directions that you can follow easily to help you with that cognitive load problem, the better everybody's lives are going to be.
You are a fountain of information, and it's been a pleasure to talk to you today, John. I want to thank you so much for being here.
It's my pleasure. It really is my pleasure. Thank you.
And if people want more information about you or your work, where can they go?
They can go to my blog, clearhelper.blog.
Great. That's CLEARHELPER.BLOG. And if you'd like more information about open access technologies, you can go to openaccesstech.com. That's openaccesstech.com. I'm Portland Helmick. Thank you so much for joining us on A is for Accessibility. I hope you learned something new.